Marcus Chen had always believed that kindness was a language everyone could understand, even if they couldn't speak the same words. That belief would soon be tested in ways he never imagined possible. The small farming colony of New Eden sat on the edge of human space, where the last traces of Earth's influence faded into the unknown. Marcus worked as a supply coordinator for the settlement, managing food distribution and ensuring everyone had enough to eat. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. In a place where the nearest major colony was 3 months away by fastest transport, every meal counted. The children appeared on a Tuesday morning, just as the twin sons of Kepler 442 began their daily dance across the purple sky. Marcus was checking inventory in the storage facility when he heard strange sounds coming from behind the grain silos. Curious clicking noises mixed with what sounded like whimpering. When he rounded the corner, Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. 3 small beings huddled together near a pile of discarded packaging. They were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Each stood about 3 feet tall with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered between silver and blue. Their large oval eyes dominated faces that were almost human but somehow alien. Most striking were the delicate, translucent membranes that extended from their arms, folded against their bodies like wings. The smallest one, no bigger than a human toddler, was clearly in distress. Its breathing came in rapid, shallow gasps, and its skin had taken on a dull gray color that Marcus instinctively knew wasn't healthy. The other 2 were trying to comfort their companion, making soft humming sounds while gently stroking its head with long, slender fingers. Marcus's first instinct was to call the colony administrators, but something about the scene stopped him. These weren't invaders or threats. They were children lost and hungry and afraid. The evidence was right there in front of him. Empty food containers scattered around their makeshift shelter, probably scavenged from the colony's waste disposal area. Moving slowly to avoid startling them, Marcus crouched down and opened his lunch container. The 3 beings immediately focused on the simple meal of bread, synthesized protein, and dried fruit. Their large eyes tracked every movement as he set the container on the ground between them and backed away. The largest of the 3 approached cautiously, its movements graceful despite obvious exhaustion. It picked up a piece of bread, sniffed it carefully, then took a small bite. Almost immediately, its skin brightened slightly, shifting from dull gray toward a healthier silver blue. The being made a series of rapid clicking sounds to its companions, who quickly joined in the meal. Marcus watched in fascination as their skin colors continued to improve with each bite. Whatever these beings were, they were clearly suffering from malnutrition. The smallest one, after eating a few pieces of fruit, began to breathe more easily. Its skin regained some of its natural shimmer, and it managed to produce a sound that Marcus could only describe as a purr. Over the following days, Marcus found himself returning to the storage area with increasingly larger portions of food. He told himself it was temporary, just until the beings recovered enough to move on. But each time he saw them, they looked a little better, a little stronger. Their skin colors became more vibrant, and they began to explore their surroundings with growing confidence. The beings seemed to understand that Marcus was helping them. They would wait patiently for his visits, and the largest one had begun to approach him without fear. It would touch his hand gently with its elongated fingers, making soft humming sounds that felt remarkably like gratitude. Marcus started bringing educational tablets, loaded with basic language programs. To his amazement, the beings learned with incredible speed. Within a week, the eldest could manage simple words in standard human. It introduced itself with a sound that Marcus approximated as Zara, and indicated that the other 2 were Keat and Nix. Through careful communication and lots of pointing, Marcus learned that they had been traveling for a long time, searching for food and safety. They spoke of others like them, scattered across different worlds, and of a great darkness that had separated them from their home. Their story was fragmented and difficult to understand, but the pain in their large eyes was unmistakable. As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself growing attached to the 3 young aliens. Zara, the eldest, displayed remarkable intelligence and curiosity about human technology. Keat, the middle child, had an artistic nature and would create beautiful patterns in the dirt using stones and scraps of metal. Little Nix, no longer gray and gasping, had developed into a playful creature who seemed to find joy in the simplest things. Marcus began to worry about what would happen when the colony administrators discovered his secret. New Eden had strict protocols about contact with unknown alien species. The beings would likely be quarantined, studied, and eventually transferred to a research facility. The thought of subjecting Zara, Keat, and Nix to that kind of treatment made his stomach turn, so he kept their existence secret, bringing them food, water, and companionship every day. He rigged up a simple shelter using maintenance equipment, providing them with a warm, dry place to sleep. The storage facility became their unofficial home, and Marcus became their unofficial guardian. The beings seemed to understand the need for secrecy. They remained hidden during the day when other colonists might venture near the storage area. But in the evenings, when Marcus finished his regular duties, they would emerge to share meals and practice their growing vocabulary of human words. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the distant mountains, Zara managed to string together a complete sentence in standard human. "Marcus, good friend," she said, her voice carrying musical tones that made the simple words sound like poetry. "We grateful always." Marcus smiled, unaware that his small act of daily kindness was about to set in motion events that would reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. He couldn't know that the 3 children he was feeding were members of the most powerful ruling family in known space, or that their disappearance had triggered a massive search operation involving thousands of ships and millions of beings. All he knew was that 3 lost children needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. In Marcus's mind, it was really that simple. Kindness didn't require complicated justification or careful political calculation. It just required someone willing to act when action was needed. Tomorrow he would bring them fresh fruit from the hydroponic gardens. Perhaps he would teach them a few more human words or learn more about their fascinating culture. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities that Marcus couldn't begin to imagine. 3 months had passed since Marcus first discovered the alien children, and what had started as a simple act of compassion had evolved into something far more complex. The 3 beings had grown stronger and more confident under his care, but Marcus was beginning to realize that their presence on New Eden might not be as accidental as he had initially believed. Zara's language skills had advanced remarkably, and she could now hold complex conversations in standard human. Through these talks, Marcus learned disturbing details about their journey to his world. They hadn't simply wandered onto New Eden by accident. They had been running, fleeing from something Zara called the dark ships that had attacked their home. "We flew many cycles," Zara explained one evening, as they shared a meal of fresh vegetables from the colony's gardens. "Mother's guards put us in escape pod when dark ships came. Pod broke and crashed here." She gestured toward the horizon with her long, graceful arm. "We walked many days, very hungry, very scared." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. An escape pod meant these children weren't just lost travelers. They were refugees from some kind of conflict, possibly even war. The implications were staggering. If hostile forces were pursuing them, New Eden could be in danger simply by harboring them. But looking at little Nix, who was carefully arranging colorful stones in intricate patterns while humming contentedly, Marcus couldn't bring himself to see these children as a threat. Whatever conflict they had fled from, they were innocents caught in the middle of something beyond their control. Keat, the artistic middle child, had become fascinated with human technology. Marcus had brought several broken devices for the beings to examine, and Keat displayed an intuitive understanding of complex systems that amazed him. The young alien could diagnose problems with equipment that stumped the colony's trained technicians. "Your people very clever," Keat told Marcus in stilted but enthusiastic standard human. "Make good machines, but design could be better. See here?" The being pointed to a malfunctioning atmospheric processor. "Energy flow wrong direction. Simple fix." Under Keat's guidance, Marcus had repaired several critical pieces of equipment that had been scheduled for expensive replacement. Word of his sudden technical expertise was beginning to spread among the colonists, and Marcus worried that people might start asking uncomfortable questions about his newfound abilities. The situation became more complicated when Zara began displaying knowledge that no child should possess. During one of their conversations, she casually mentioned details about galactic trade routes, political alliances between distant star systems, and military technologies that were supposedly classified at the highest levels. How do you know about quantum displacement drives? Marcus asked after Zara had accurately described the theoretical propulsion system that human scientists were still struggling to develop. Zara's large eyes took on a distant look. Mother showed me many things, said important to understand how galaxy works even if never want to use knowledge. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Our people. We not simple travelers. We important, but I not supposed to say why. Marcus felt the weight of that revelation settle on his shoulders. Important meant powerful, and powerful meant dangerous for everyone involved. He was harboring 3 alien children, who clearly came from positions of significant authority in their society. Their enemies, whoever they were, would stop at nothing to find them. Despite the growing complexity of the situation, Marcus couldn't bring himself to report their presence to the colonial authorities. The children trusted him completely, and he had grown to care for them as if they were his own family. Zara's quick intelligence, Keith's artistic brilliance, and Nix's pure joy and simple pleasures had become the brightest parts of his daily routine. The colony's food supplies were beginning to show the strain of his daily diversions, but Marcus had become creative about covering the shortages. He volunteered for extra shifts, worked unpaid overtime, and used his access codes to mask the missing inventory. As far as the official record showed, everything was perfectly normal. Late one night, while Marcus was bringing the children their evening meal, Zara pulled him aside for a private conversation. Her skin had taken on deeper blue tones, which he had learned indicated serious concern or concentration. Marcus, she said, her voice unusually formal, must tell you something important. We not safe here much longer. Dark ships still hunting us. They find us eventually. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had known this day would come, but hearing it confirmed made the reality impossible to ignore. How long do we have? He asked, not know exactly. Maybe days, maybe weeks, but they come. Zara's large eyes met his, and Marcus saw ancient wisdom that had no place in a child's gaze. When they come, you must not try to protect us. You good human, but they too strong. They hurt you if you help us. The thought of abandoning the children to their fate made Marcus feel physically sick. These weren't abstract concepts anymore. They were Zara, who had taught him words in her musical language that meant friendship and gratitude. They were Keith, whose artistic creations had turned a corner of the storage facility into a beautiful gallery of alien art. They were Nix, who had learned to laugh at Marcus's terrible jokes and always greeted him with excited chirping sounds. There has to be another way, Marcus insisted. Maybe we could hide you better or find you transport off-world. Zara shook her head sadly. Dark ships have very good hunters. They find us anywhere we hide, and we cannot leave without special help. She hesitated, then continued. There is one way, but very dangerous for you. Tell me, Marcus said without hesitation. We could send message to our people. Tell them where we are, but dark ships watch for such messages. They might come first, might hurt everyone on your world. Zara's skin had shifted to deep purple, a color Marcus had never seen before. Not fair to ask you choose between us and your people. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the impossible decision Zara had laid before him. Contact the children's people and risk bringing a war to New Eden, or continue hiding them and hope their enemies never found the colony. Either choice could result in disaster. As he looked at the 3 young beings who had brought such unexpected joy into his life, Marcus realized that his choice had already been made. These children represented something precious and rare in a galaxy that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. They were living proof that intelligence, creativity, and kindness could exist in forms that humans had never imagined. Whatever the consequences, he couldn't abandon them now. The only question was how to proceed without destroying everything he was trying to protect. Show me how to send the message, Marcus said finally. We'll find a way to make this work. Zara's skin brightened with relief and gratitude, but her eyes remained worried. Neither of them could know that the message they were about to send would reach the most powerful being in the known galaxy, or that Marcus's simple act of kindness was about to trigger a response that would forever change the relationship between humans and the vast alien empire that ruled the stars. The message array that Zara constructed from salvaged colony equipment was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Using spare parts from the communications center, broken atmospheric processors, and materials that Keat had somehow convinced to function in impossible ways. The three children had built a device that seemed to bend the laws of physics. How is this even working? Marcus asked as he watched energy patterns dance through crystalline structures that definitely hadn't existed an hour ago. Quantum resonance through bio-neural interface, Zara explained matter-of-factly, as if she were describing how to make coffee. Your human technology, very good foundation, but missing key elements. We add what needed. Marcus stared at the device, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. The children had taken basic human electronics and transformed them into something that belonged in the most advanced research laboratories in human space. The fact that they could do this casually, as if it were simple engineering, suggested technological capabilities that far exceeded anything humanity had achieved. Are you sure this won't be detected by the wrong people? Marcus asked as Zara began programming complex sequences into the modified equipment. Cannot be sure, Zara admitted, her skin taking on worried blue tones. But message designed to reach only our people. Special frequencies, special codes. Dark ships not know these signals. Keat and Nix worked together to fine-tune the device, their four hands moving in perfect coordination as they adjusted components that seemed to respond to their touch alone. Watching them work, Marcus was struck by how naturally they collaborated, as if they shared some form of silent communication that went beyond spoken words. Ready now, Zara announced after what felt like hours of preparation. Message will tell our people where we are, that we safe, that human friend helping us. She looked at Marcus with eyes that held far too much gravity for someone so young. Also tell them about you, about kindness you show. This important. Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. What exactly are you telling them about me? Truth, Zara said simply. That human named Marcus Chen found 3 lost children and chose to help without asking for anything. That you share food every day. Keep us safe, teach us your language. That you good person in galaxy that not always good. The message was brief, lasting only a few seconds, but Marcus could feel the energy discharge even from several feet away. The air itself seemed to shimmer as the signal departed, carrying information across vast distances through methods that human science could barely theorize about. As soon as the transmission ended, Zara immediately began dismantling the device. Must not leave evidence, she explained. If dark ships come before our people, better they not know how we sent message. Within minutes, the impossible array had been reduced to seemingly random pieces of broken equipment. To any outside observer, it would look like nothing more than a collection of damaged electronics waiting for disposal. Over the following days, Marcus found himself constantly looking up at the sky, wondering when and how the children's people would respond. Zara had explained that the message would take time to reach its destination, and more time for help to arrive. But she couldn't be specific about the timeline. Space very big, she said when Marcus pressed her for details. Our people might be far away now dealing with dark ship attacks. Could be days, could be weeks before they come. Meanwhile, life on New Eden continued its normal rhythm. Marcus maintained his regular duties, managing food distribution and equipment maintenance with his usual efficiency. The only difference was the constant underlying tension of knowing that at any moment, everything could change. The children seemed to sense this tension as well. They became more cautious about venturing out of their hidden shelter, and their play took on a subdued quality. Even little Nix, usually the most cheerful of the 3, seemed to understand that dangerous times lay ahead. One evening, as Marcus shared dinner with his unusual family, Keat made an observation that chilled him to the bone. Ships in sky today, the artistic child said casually, while arranging food into colorful patterns on their makeshift plate. Very high trying to hide, but I see them. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What kind of ships? Zara's skin immediately shifted to deep purple, the color of extreme alarm. Describe what you saw, she urged her sibling. Keat's description of angular black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it matched Zara's earlier warnings about the dark ships. The enemy had found New Eden, and they were conducting surveillance to determine if their targets were hidden somewhere on the planet. How long before they realize you're here? Marcus asked, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. Not long, Zara admitted. They have very good sensors, can detect our biosignatures from orbit. Maybe one day, maybe 2. Then they come down to investigate. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. Not only were the three children he had grown to love in mortal danger, but their presence had brought that danger to every innocent person on New Eden. The colony had no military defenses, no way to protect itself against advanced alien technology. "I have to warn the colonial administration," Marcus said, more to himself than to the children. "They need to know what's coming." "No!" Zara said sharply, her skin flashing bright red in what Marcus had learned was their species' equivalent of shouting. "If you tell them about us, they panic, do stupid things. Maybe try to surrender us to dark ships, think that will save them. Will not work. Dark ships kill everyone anyway to hide evidence." The casual way Zara discussed mass murder made Marcus realize just how serious their situation had become. These weren't just political fugitives running from an inconvenient government. They were refugees from something that treated genocide as a standard operating procedure. "Then what do we do?" Marcus asked, feeling helpless in the face of such overwhelming odds. Nix, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, suddenly perked up and began making rapid clicking sounds. Zara and Keat immediately focused on their youngest sibling, responding with similar clicks and musical tones. "Nix has idea," Zara translated after several minutes of animated discussion. "Very dangerous, but might work. Nix wants to use colony's main communication array to boost signal. Call for help from closer ships." Marcus frowned. "I thought you already sent a message to your people." "Yes, but that message go to homeworlds very far away. Nix think maybe some of our people closer, looking for us. If we send stronger signal on different frequencies might reach them faster." The plan was risky beyond measure. Using the colony's main communication array would require Marcus to override security protocols and risk exposure. If the dark ships detected the transmission, they would know exactly where their targets were located and would likely attack immediately. But as Marcus looked at the three children who had become his family, he realized there was no real choice. They were running out of time, and desperate situations called for desperate measures. "Tell me what you need," Marcus said quietly. Zara's skin brightened with determination. "Need access to main array after dark when fewer humans watching. And need you to be very brave, Marcus Chen. What we do next might save us all, or might bring danger faster than expected." As night fell over New Eden, Marcus prepared for what might be the most important decision of his life. Somewhere in the darkness above, hostile ships waited for confirmation of their target's location, and somewhere in the vast distances between stars help might be coming. If they could survive long enough for it to arrive, the fate of three alien children, one human colony, and perhaps the future relationship between two species hung in the balance of what would happen in the next few hours. The communication center stood silent under the twin moons of Kepler 442, its main array pointing toward the star-filled darkness like a metallic finger reaching for the infinite. Marcus approached the building with three small shadows following close behind, his heart pounding so hard he was certain it could be heard across the entire colony. Getting inside had been easier than expected. Marcus's supply coordinator credentials gave him access to most colony facilities, and the night security systems recognized his biometric signature without question. The real challenge would be what came next. "Remember," Zara whispered as they made their way through the darkened corridors. "Must work very fast. Once we begin transmission, dark ships will know exactly where we are. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 before they come." Marcus nodded, trying to push down the terror that threatened to overwhelm him. In a few minutes, he would either save 3 innocent lives or bring destruction to everyone he had sworn to protect. The weight of that responsibility made his hands shake as he entered his authorization codes into the main communication console. Keat and Nix immediately went to work on the technical aspects of their plan, their small hands moving with impossible precision as they interfaced with the human equipment. Watching them work, Marcus was again struck by how naturally they understood technology that should have been completely alien to them. "Your people design things very logically," Keat observed as circuits rearranged themselves under the alien child's touch. "Easy to understand, easy to improve, see? Signal strength now 40% better." "How are you doing that?" Marcus asked, watching in fascination as the equipment's performance indicators climbed to levels he had never seen before. "Bio-neural interface," Nix explained proudly, speaking more standard human than Marcus had ever heard from the youngest child. "We think to machines, machines think back. Your computer's very friendly, want to help." Zara was programming the transmission sequence, her face intense with concentration. "Signal ready," she announced. We'll broadcast on multiple frequencies, quantum and subspace both. Any of our ships within 50 light-years will receive message. And the dark ships? Marcus asked. They hear too, Zara admitted. But our ships faster, better shields. If any of our people close, they reach us first. The qualification in her voice made Marcus's stomach clench. If their people were close. If the dark ships weren't too close already. If the transmission worked as intended. Too many variables, too many ways for everything to go catastrophically wrong. Do it, Marcus said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. The transmission that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Energy coursed through the communication array with such intensity that the air itself seemed to vibrate. The children stood perfectly still, their skin glowing with soft bioluminescence as they maintained their connection to the equipment, through means that human science couldn't begin to explain. For exactly 97 seconds, the modified array broadcast a signal that reached across vast distances, carrying a plea for help written in languages and frequencies that predated human civilization. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the transmission ended, leaving only the normal background hum of standard electronics. Message sent, Zara reported, her skin now pale with exhaustion. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Less than 3 minutes after the transmission ended, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. Marcus's communicator buzzed with urgent messages from the colonial administration, demanding explanations for the unauthorized use of communication equipment and the unknown energy signatures that had been detected by orbital sensors. Dark ships moving, Keat announced, pressing against one of the communication center's windows and staring up at the star-filled sky. Coming down fast. Marcus looked up and saw them, 3 angular shapes descending through the atmosphere like black daggers cutting through the night. They moved with predatory grace, their approach vectors suggesting they knew exactly where their targets were located. We need to get back to the storage facility, Marcus said, gathering the children together. If we're going to make our last stand, it should be somewhere familiar. But as they prepared to leave the communication center, Nick suddenly froze, cocking their head as if listening to something only they could hear. The youngest child's skin began to glow brighter, shifting through colors that Marcus had never seen before. Something coming, Nix announced, excitement overriding fear in their musical voice. Big ships very fast using quantum tunnels. Zara immediately focused her attention skyward, her own skin beginning to brighten. Family ships, she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and relief. Mother's fleet. The next few minutes passed in a blur of impossible events. The dark ships that had been descending toward the colony suddenly changed course, accelerating back toward orbit as if responding to a new and more pressing threat. In the distance, space itself seemed to tear open as massive vessels emerged from what Marcus could only describe as holes in reality. The new ships were beautiful in a way that made Marcus's chest tighten with emotion. They curved and flowed like living things, their hulls shimmering with the same bioluminescent patterns that decorated the children's skin. Even from a distance, they radiated power and grace in equal measure. 14 primary battlecruisers, Zara reported with obvious pride, somehow able to identify specific vessels that looked identical to Marcus. Mother brought the full ceremonial fleet. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 5 minutes. The dark ships tried to fight, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Marcus watched through the communication center's windows as impossible energies danced across the night sky, as alien technologies clashed in ways that violated everything he thought he knew about physics. When it was over, 3 of the beautiful vessels began descending toward New Eden, while the rest maintained defensive positions in orbit. Marcus could see colonial shuttles rising to meet them, their pilots undoubtedly confused and terrified by the sudden appearance of an alien fleet in their system. Time to go home, Zara said softly, taking Marcus's hand in her delicate fingers. Time for you to meet Mother. As they left the communication center, Marcus felt as if he were walking through a dream. In the space of a few hours, his quiet life on a farming colony had transformed into something that belonged in the most fantastic science fiction stories. He was about to meet the leader of an alien empire, the mother of 3 children he had grown to love, the being whose arrival had just saved everyone on New Eden from an unthinkable fate. The largest of the descending ships settled onto the colony's main landing field with impossible grace, its massive bulk creating no more disturbance than a falling leaf. As its landing ramps extended, Marcus caught his first glimpse of the beings who had crossed vast distances to retrieve 3 lost children. They were tall and elegant, their skin patterns more complex and vibrant than those of the children. They moved with fluid precision, their large eyes scanning the assembled colonists with intelligence that seemed to penetrate straight to the soul. At their head walked a figure that commanded attention through presence alone. Even before Zara spoke, Marcus knew he was looking at their mother. The family resemblance was unmistakable, but more than that, there was something about her bearing that spoke of absolute authority, tempered by deep wisdom. This was a being accustomed to command, to having entire worlds hang on her every decision. "Mother," Zara called out, her voice carrying across the landing field with joy that made Marcus smile despite his nervousness. The tall figure turned toward them, and Marcus saw her eyes widen with relief and love as she caught sight of her children, but her gaze didn't stop there. Those ancient, intelligent eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel as if every thought and memory in his head were being carefully examined. He was about to meet the being who ruled the galaxy, and she was about to meet the human who had fed her children every day for months without knowing who they were or what consequences his kindness might bring. The next few minutes would determine not just Marcus's fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the vast empire that had just revealed itself to his small corner of the universe. Empress Valdris Kethamara, supreme ruler of the hegemony of worlds, keeper of the stellar throne and commander of 10,000 fleets, knelt in the dust of a human farming colony and wept. Marcus had expected many things from this first encounter with galactic royalty. Formal ceremonies, perhaps, intimidating displays of power, demands for explanations about how 3 imperial children had ended up hiding in his storage facility. What he hadn't expected was for the most powerful being in known space to fall to her knees and gather her children in her arms while tears streamed down her face. "My little ones," she whispered in her musical language, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "I thought you were lost forever." Zara, Keat, and Nyx pressed against their mother with desperate relief, all of them speaking at once in rapid bursts of clicks, hums, and melodic tones. Marcus watched the reunion with a mixture of joy and growing apprehension. These children weren't just important. They were the heirs to an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. After several minutes of intense family bonding, Empress Valdris turned her attention to Marcus. When she rose to her full height, nearly 7 feet tall, her presence seemed to fill the entire landing field. Her skin displayed patterns of deep purple and gold that Marcus instinctively recognized as markers of ultimate authority. "You are Marcus Chen," she said, her accented standard human carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The one who fed my children." It wasn't a question, and Marcus found himself nodding before he could think of an appropriate response. Standing before this magnificent being, he felt like an insect trying to communicate with a star. "Yes, Your Majesty," he managed, unsure of the proper form of address for someone who ruled galaxies. A slight smile touched the corners of the Empress's mouth. "Valdris will suffice for now. We have much to discuss, Marcus Chen, but first I must understand exactly what has transpired here." What followed was the most surreal conversation of Marcus's life. Under the watchful eyes of hundreds of colonists and dozens of Imperial guards, he explained how he had discovered 3 lost alien children and decided to help them. The Empress listened without interruption, her large eyes never leaving his face as he described months of secret meals, language lessons, and growing affection for her offspring. "You asked for nothing in return," Valdris observed when he finished his account. "Made no demands, sought no advantage. You simply helped." "They were children," Marcus said, as if that explained everything. "They were hungry and scared. What else was I supposed to do?" The Empress exchanged glances with several of her advisors, their skin patterns shifting through colors that Marcus was beginning to recognize as surprise and confusion. Apparently, the concept of helping without expectation of reward was not common in their experience of galactic politics. "Tell me," Valdris continued, "what did you know of my children's identity when you first began caring for them?" "Nothing," Marcus admitted. "I knew they were alien, obviously, but I had no idea who they were or where they came from. I just knew they needed help. More colorful skin patterns among the Imperial delegation. Marcus was beginning to suspect that he had inadvertently done something that violated normal diplomatic protocols in fundamental ways. Zara stepped forward, inserting herself into the conversation with the confidence of someone accustomed to being heard. "Mother, Marcus is good human. Best friend. He protected us, taught us, kept us safe from dark ships. Without him, we would be dead or captured." "The Void Cult," Valdris said, her skin darkening to colors that made Marcus think of deep space and distant stars. "They found your escape pod's trajectory and have been hunting you across 17 systems. How they located you here, I do not know. We sent signal," Keat explained proudly. "Used human equipment, made it work better. Dark ships probably detected transmission." Valdris turned to look at the communication center, then back at Marcus with something that might have been respect. "You risked your entire world to help them call for rescue." It hadn't felt like a grand gesture at the time, just the next logical step in protecting the children he had grown to love. But hearing it described by the Empress made Marcus realize just how significant that decision had been. "The Void Cult would have killed everyone on this world to prevent witnesses," Valdris continued. "Your choice to help my children probably saved thousands of lives." The weight of that revelation settled on Marcus like a physical burden. He had thought he was just helping 3 lost children, but apparently he had been making decisions that affected the fate of entire populations. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, dreading the answer. In every human story about contact with advanced aliens, the primitive civilization ended up being absorbed, dominated, or destroyed. New Eden was barely more than a farming settlement. How could they possibly coexist with an empire that could tear holes in space and rebuild human technology with casual ease? Valdris was quiet for a long moment, her skin patterns shifting through complex sequences that seemed to reflect deep thought. When she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of imperial decree. "Marcus Chen," she said formally, "by your actions, you have placed the Imperial House of Kethamara in your debt. This is not a small thing. In 3,000 years of imperial history, only 7 beings have been granted such status." Marcus felt his knees go weak. "I don't want anything," he managed. "I just wanted to help." "Yes," Valdris said softly. "That is precisely why you are so dangerous." The comment sent chills down Marcus's spine, until he saw the slight smile returning to the Empress's face. "Dangerous to the established order, I mean. You have demonstrated that humans are capable of kindness without expectation of reward, generosity without calculation of advantage. This changes how we must view your species." She gestured toward the assembled colonists, who had been watching the proceedings with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "These are your people?" "This is my home," Marcus confirmed. "Then your home shall be protected," Valdris declared. "New Eden will be placed under imperial protection. No hostile force will threaten this world while my children's savior lives upon it." The implications of that statement rippled through the crowd of colonists like a shockwave. Marcus could see faces lighting up with wonder and hope as they began to understand what had just happened. Their small farming colony had just been granted the protection of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But Valdris wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "humanity shall be offered full membership in the hegemony of worlds, with all the rights and protections that such status entails. Your species has demonstrated virtues that we value highly." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet, literally and figuratively. "I'm not qualified to make decisions for my entire species," he protested. "I'm just a supply coordinator." "You are the human who fed my children every day for 3 months without knowing who they were," Valdris replied. "You are exactly the kind of human we wish to deal with." Nick suddenly broke away from the family group and scampered over to Marcus, wrapping small arms around his legs in an enthusiastic hug. "Marcus, come visit us," the youngest child declared. "See the palace, meet the aunties, play in the quantum gardens." The casual invitation from a galactic princess to visit what was presumably the most heavily guarded location in the known universe made Marcus laugh, despite the overwhelming nature of everything that was happening. "I think I'd like that," he admitted, reaching down to pat Nix's head with gentle affection. Valdris watched the interaction with eyes that seemed to see far more than they revealed. "My children have become quite attached to you," she observed. "They speak of you as family." "They are family," Marcus said without hesitation. "Whatever else happens, they'll always have a place in my life." The Empress's skin patterns shifted to warm golds and silvers. Colors that Marcus was learning indicated deep satisfaction and approval. Then it seems we have found the foundation for a lasting alliance between our peoples. One built not on treaties or trade agreements, but on the simple recognition that kindness transcends the boundaries between species. As the twin suns of Kepler 442 began to rise over the horizon, painting the landing field in shades of purple and gold, Marcus realized that his quiet life as a supply coordinator was over forever. In its place lay possibilities that he couldn't begin to imagine, adventures that would take him to the furthest reaches of galactic civilization, and the knowledge that his simple act of daily kindness had changed the course of history for 2 entire species. The children who had wandered into his storage facility 4 months ago were going home, but they weren't leaving him behind. They were taking him with them into a future that promised to be far more extraordinary than anything he had ever dared to dream. The Imperial Palace of Valdris stretched across an entire continent on the capital world of Kethmara Prime, its living spires reaching toward triple suns that painted the sky in constantly shifting spectrums of light. Marcus stood on a balcony that jutted out from the palace's highest tower, looking down at a cityscape that defied every assumption he had ever made about architecture, engineering, and the possible. 6 months had passed since the rescue on New Eden, and Marcus was still adjusting to his new life as an honored guest of the Imperial Court. The transition from colonial supply coordinator to unofficial human ambassador had been overwhelming, but the presence of Zara, Keat, and Nix had made it bearable. The 3 children had refused to let him feel lost or alone in their vast, magnificent world. The Council of Worlds is gathering today, Zara informed him as she joined him on the balcony. At 8 feet tall in her adult form, she now towered over Marcus, but her eyes still held the same intelligent warmth that had characterized the small, hungry child he had first encountered. They want to meet the human who changed imperial policy through simple kindness. Marcus sighed, still uncomfortable with the attention his actions continued to generate. I still don't understand why everyone thinks what I did was so remarkable. You were children who needed help. Any decent person would have done the same thing. But that is exactly why it was remarkable, Keat observed, flowing onto the balcony with the artistic grace that had become their trademark. The middle child had grown into their talents, becoming one of the most celebrated biosculptors in the Empire. In a galaxy where most beings calculate the advantage of every action, you acted purely from compassion. That is rarer than you think. The transformation of his 3 young friends into adults had been one of the most startling aspects of Marcus's new life. The species of the Imperial House experienced rapid growth phases during times of safety and abundance, and the children had matured into their full adult forms within months of returning home. But despite their physical changes, their fundamental personalities remained wonderfully familiar. The representatives from the Outer Rim systems are particularly eager to meet you, Nix added, bouncing onto the balcony with the enthusiasm that had never changed despite their increased size and responsibilities. They have heard stories about human adaptability and want to discuss cultural exchange programs. Marcus had spent the past 6 months learning about the true scope of the hegemony of worlds. The Empire wasn't the rigid militaristic organization he had initially imagined. Instead, it was a complex alliance of thousands of species, each contributing their unique strengths to a civilization that spanned multiple galaxy clusters. The Imperial House served as coordinators and protectors rather than dictators, maintaining peace through strength while allowing member worlds enormous autonomy. Humanity's integration into this vast community had proceeded with surprising smoothness. Earth's governments had initially been skeptical of the alliance offer, but the obvious benefits quickly overcame political resistance. Access to advanced medical technology, clean energy systems, and interstellar travel capabilities had transformed human civilization almost overnight. Tell me again why the Council considers human membership so important, Marcus requested, still trying to understand his species' role in galactic politics. Because humans think differently, Valdris explained as she joined the group on the balcony. The Empress had become a frequent conversation partner during Marcus's stay, their discussions ranging from philosophy to practical governance. Most species in the hegemony evolved along similar paths, hierarchical societies with clear dominant structures. Humans developed something unique, the ability to cooperate across tribal boundaries without requiring submission. Marcus frowned. That doesn't sound unique. Most of the species I've met here seem perfectly capable of cooperation. Yes, but cooperation within established frameworks, Valdris clarified. Humans cooperate by creating new frameworks when old ones prove inadequate. Your species solves problems by redefining the problems themselves. As if to illustrate her point, a small human delegation materialized on the balcony via the palace's teleportation network. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's chief scientific advisor to the hegemony, carried data tablets displaying information that had the 3 imperial children immediately clustering around her with excitement. We've completed the preliminary analysis of the human creativity studies, Dr. Kim announced, her voice carrying barely contained enthusiasm. The results are going to revolutionize how we approach innovation across the hegemony. The study had been one of dozens of collaborative projects initiated since humanity joined the Alliance. Hegemony scientists had been fascinated by human problem-solving methodologies, particularly the tendency to find unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. Show them the breakthrough, urged Professor Martinez, another member of the human delegation. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display that showed complex mathematical formulations floating in the air above them. Human graduate students solved the quantum consciousness paradox that has puzzled hegemony philosophers for millennia. They approached it as an engineering problem rather than a theoretical exercise. Valdris studied the display with obvious interest. Harrison, they built a working model, Dr. Kim explained. Instead of debating whether artificial consciousness was theoretically possible, they simply created it and then studied how it functioned. The implications of the breakthrough rippled through the assembled group. Artificial consciousness had been considered impossible by hegemony science, one of the fundamental barriers that limited technological development. If humans had found a way around that limitation, it would open up entirely new fields of research and application. This is the 3rd major breakthrough this month, Keat observed. Human researchers are also developing new approaches to faster-than-light communication and biological regeneration. Your species has a gift for making the impossible seem obvious, Valdris agreed, which brings us to the real reason for today's council meeting. Marcus felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. Council meetings of the hegemony of worlds typically dealt with matters that affected trillions of beings across vast distances. He was still adjusting to the idea that his opinions might matter on such a scale. The void cult has been quiet for too long, Valdris continued, her skin pattern shifting to the darker colors that indicated serious concern. Our intelligence network suggests they are planning something significant, possibly an assault on one of the core worlds. The void cult, the same group that had hunted the Imperial children across 17 star systems, remained the greatest threat to galactic peace. Unlike other hostile organizations, they seemed motivated by pure nihilism, seeking to destroy rather than conquer. Their attacks were unpredictable and devastating, leaving entire worlds as empty husks drifting through space. What does this have to do with humans? Marcus asked. Everything, Zara replied. Human tactical thinking has already proven superior to our traditional approaches. The Council wants to discuss placing human strategists in key positions throughout the fleet command structure. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once again. It seemed that everywhere he turned, the simple act of feeding 3 hungry children continued to generate consequences that affected millions of lives. I'm not qualified to advise on military strategy, he protested. No, Valdris agreed, but you are qualified to advise on human nature. And human nature may be the key to defeating an enemy that has confounded us for centuries. As they made their way through the palace corridors toward the council chambers, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been managing food distribution schedules for a farming colony. Now he was being asked to help plan the defense of galactic civilization. But as he watched Zara, Keat, and Nyx chatting excitedly about the upcoming meeting, he realized that some things hadn't changed at all. They were still the same 3 beings he had grown to love, and protecting them remained his highest priority. If that meant helping to plan a war against cosmic nihilists, then so be it. The council chambers opened before them, revealing representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to discuss the fate of galactic civilization, and at the center of it all sat Marcus Chen, former supply coordinator, current unofficial ambassador. and living proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could reshape the destiny of entire universes. The real test of that kindness was about to begin. The war against the Void Cult had lasted 18 months and reshaped the galaxy in ways that no one could have predicted. What began as a defensive campaign had evolved into something unprecedented. The first truly collaborative military effort in the history of the hegemony of worlds. With human strategic thinking at its core, Marcus stood in the command center of the hegemony flagship Eternal Harmony, watching real-time displays of battles occurring across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The bridge hummed with activity as beings from hundreds of different species worked together with a coordination that would have been impossible before human integration into the command structure. Sector 7 reports successful evacuation of the Mindari colonies, announced Admiral Tashkova, a towering crystalline being whose thought processes operated at speeds that made her invaluable for coordinating multi-front operations. Human tactical recommendations proved accurate again. The Void Cult fell for the decoy fleet completely. Marcus nodded, still amazed by how effective human military deception had proven against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. The Void Cult fought with terrifying efficiency, but their rigid adherence to logical progression made them vulnerable to the kind of misdirection that humans had elevated to an art form. The key is understanding that they can't comprehend irrationality, explained General Sarah Rodriguez, the human strategic coordinator who had become Marcus's closest collaborator in the war effort. They analyze our actions based on optimal outcomes, so when we deliberately choose suboptimal tactics, they become confused and vulnerable. The strategy had worked brilliantly, but Marcus knew that their success came at a terrible cost. Entire star systems had been evacuated, billions of beings displaced from their homes. The Void Cult's response to human tactical innovations had been to escalate their destructive capabilities, turning the conflict into a race between salvation and annihilation. Marcus, Zara called from her position at the primary coordination station. The final phase is ready to begin. Marcus turned to look at his 3 alien family members now serving as key figures in the war effort. Zara had become the primary liaison between human and hegemony command structures, her perfect understanding of both cultures making her invaluable for implementing complex joint operations. Keith's artistic abilities had proven remarkably applicable to military camouflage and deception techniques. Even little Nix had found a role, their natural empathy making them an expert at predicting enemy behavior patterns. The final phase. After 18 months of fighting, they had finally located the Void Cult's primary base of operations, a massive artificial construct hidden in the space between galaxies. The structure was defended by technological capabilities that exceeded even hegemony standards, protected by fields that could manipulate spacetime itself. All fleet elements report ready, Admiral Tashkova announced. 2,000 ships from 400 worlds united under human tactical doctrine. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility like a physical burden. 2,000 ships meant millions of lives, beings who had volunteered to follow human strategic leadership into what might be the most dangerous battle in galactic history. "Are you certain about this plan?" Empress Valdris asked privately, her skin patterns displaying colors that Marcus had learned indicated deep concern. "The risks are enormous. The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of attempting a direct assault on the Void Cult stronghold, they would use the enemy's own weapons against them." Human engineers had spent months studying captured Void Cult technology, learning how their space-time manipulation systems functioned. The final battle would involve turning those same systems against their creators, using the enemy's greatest strength as their ultimate weakness. "It's our best chance," Marcus replied. "Maybe our only chance. The Void Cult expects us to fight conventionally, to try matching their technology with superior numbers. They won't expect us to turn their own defenses into weapons." The attack began with what appeared to be a standard hegemony battle formation approaching the enemy stronghold. The Void Cult responded exactly as predicted, activating their space-time manipulation fields to create defensive barriers that should have been impenetrable. But the human plan didn't rely on penetrating those barriers. Instead, it used them. "Initiating quantum resonance cascade," announced Dr. Kim from her position in the fleet's mobile laboratory. Human theoretical modifications to Void Cult technology showing positive results. What followed was unlike any battle in the history of galactic warfare. Instead of ships firing weapons at each other, the engagement became a contest of competing physics. The Void Cult's defensive fields, modified by human engineering principles, began to resonate with each other in ways their creators had never intended. The stronghold's structural integrity is failing, reported Keat, whose artistic eye for patterns had proven remarkably effective at analyzing complex energy interactions. Their own defenses are tearing the station apart from the inside. Marcus watched in fascination as the massive enemy construct began to collapse under the weight of its own defensive systems. The Void Cult had spent centuries perfecting technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, but they had never considered that those same forces could be turned against them through creative application of seemingly inferior human engineering. Enemy vessels are attempting to escape, Admiral Tashkova reported. Should we pursue? No, Marcus said quietly. Let them go. The decision surprised many of the military commanders, but Marcus had learned something important during the long months of warfare. The Void Cult wasn't motivated by normal concepts of victory or defeat. They were driven by a fundamental belief that existence itself was meaningless, that destruction was the only honest response to the inherent chaos of reality. They need to see that creation is stronger than destruction, Marcus explained to the assembled fleet commanders. If we pursue them with violence, we validate their basic philosophy. But if we let them escape and then use our victory to rebuild what they destroyed, we prove them wrong. Valdris smiled, her skin patterns shifting to the warm golds and silvers that indicated deep approval. Once again, you demonstrate why human thinking is so valuable to the hegemony. You see solutions where others see only problems. The aftermath of the war proved Marcus's instincts correct. The surviving Void Cult forces, witnessing the galaxy's response to their defeat, began to fragment. Some continued their nihilistic campaign, but many simply disappeared into the outer darkness. Most significantly, a few actually approached hegemony representatives to discuss the possibility of rehabilitation and reintegration. They want to understand how existence can have meaning, Nix reported after serving as a translator during one of these unprecedented negotiations. The concept is alien to them, but they are curious about learning. The reconstruction efforts that followed the war showcased the best aspects of both human and hegemony civilization. Entire star systems were rebuilt using technology that blended human creativity with alien engineering expertise. Displaced populations were relocated to new worlds that surpassed their original homes in every measurable way. Marcus found himself at the center of these efforts, not as a military strategist, but as something far more important, a symbol of the principle that had guided their victory. His simple act of feeding 3 hungry children had grown into a philosophy that now shaped policy across thousands of worlds. The Marcus Doctrine, historians would later call it, the radical idea that kindness, offered without expectation of reward, could be the foundation for interstellar civilization. 5 years after the war's end, Marcus stood once again on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, looking out over a galaxy transformed. The hegemony of worlds had become something unprecedented, a truly collaborative civilization where differences in species, culture, and capability were seen as strengths rather than obstacles. Zara, Keat, and Nix had grown into positions of significant responsibility within the Imperial government, but they still made time for regular family dinners with the human who had saved their lives. Those meals remained the most important part of Marcus's day. Reminders that beneath all the grand politics and cosmic responsibilities, the relationships that mattered most were the ones built on simple human caring. "What do you think comes next?" Zara asked during one of these dinners, her question encompassing both personal futures and galactic possibilities. Marcus smiled, remembering a similar question he had once asked himself while working in a storage facility on a distant farming colony. Back then, his biggest concerns had involved food distribution schedules and equipment maintenance. Now he was helping to shape the destiny of galactic civilization. But in many ways, the essential challenge remained the same, taking care of the people around him one day at a time, one meal at a time. "One act of kindness at a time, I think," Marcus said finally. "We keep doing what we've always done. We help when help is needed. We share what we have with those who need it. And we remember that the most important battles are usually won not with weapons, but with the simple decision to treat each other with dignity and respect.